division. A lot of them fight in all of our wars, and so she saw this young man who said he was being fitted for a prosthesis. And he said, "Senator, don't worry about my arm." So they blew my arm off. My body's in better shape than a lot of people, and I went to West Point. I know the risks. I was honored to serve. But he looked at her and he said, "I do need you, though, to help me get my brain back. Help me get my brain back." And she said, "Sir," she said, I'm sorry, but I don't understand. You're having this conversation with me." He said, "Oh, yeah, I graduated into the top of my class at West Point." He said, "If you will stand right there and don't move, we can have a long conversation about military history. But I cannot go outside unless my wife writes down everything I have to do and directions to get back home." The connections that were formed that will enable all of you just here in a minute to just walk out of here and never give a second thought to how you're going, where you're going. We don't know if that guy will get them back. We met a man in Texas who'd been in therapy 2 years who got his brain back. His networks formed again. Some will, some won't. You want a president who thinks about that, who thinks about the people that can easily be forgotten and left behind, who serve this country. That's the kind of person we need in the White House. And I'm just telling you, it's really important. Now, final point I want to make is you want a change maker, somebody who can take good intentions and change things. All my life, I've been working at this. She's the best I ever saw at it. We were in law school. She took an extra year because there were no protections in American law for children against severe abuse and neglect. She and her colleagues came up with some guidelines. In a few years, they've been adopted in almost every state in the union. Every state protects its children against that kind of severe abuse and neglect. I'm talking about cigarette burns in the arm, not getting fed for 10 days. It's hard for young people to believe there were times in America when there was no protection for that. There is now. She was helping to make that kind of change as a young woman. She believed that she had an obligation to do that. And when we got out of law school, she went to work for the Children's Defense Fund, knocking on the doors of poor people's houses. Didn't go for the big bucks, took a little salary to find out how come all these kids were dropping out of school. And she found out that most of them were leaving because they had a minor mental or physical disability. Back then, schools weren't handicapped accessible. Teachers weren't trained even to teach kids with dyslexia. The report she and her young friends filed with the Congress led to the passage of the special education law, which guarantees an equal and appropriate public education to all of our children without regard to their disabilities. You should be proud of that. She was making those kind of changes. When I became governor of Arkansas, Hillary was a full-time lawyer and a full-time mom. But she took time to bring rural health care to people in areas that never had it, to raise the money herself to found America's first rural development bank to help people in small towns who lost their jobs on farms and factories, men and women who couldn't get a loan anywhere, get loans from this institution so they could start again. That bank's still up and going. That's one of the reasons she got 70% of the vote in the Democratic primary in Arkansas, and in that supposedly red state is running 15 points ahead of Senator McCain in the last poll, because they know she is a life changer for other people. And that's what you need in the White House. And when I became president, she helped to get 6 million kids health insurance under the Children's Health Insurance Program. 90% of our kids immunized for the first time. Double the rate of adoptions of people out of foster homes into permanent adoptive homes. Represented us in 80 other countries. And I've told you about what she did in the Senate. A dozen farmers from the Republican portion of New York, about 2/3 of New York, 40 of our 62 counties are heavily Republican. Hillary got 60% of the vote running for re-election in those counties because those farmers and those small business people said, she's the only person who ever really tried to change things for us, and we're going to try to change things for her. They've gone all over America campaigning for her. That's what you want, somebody who's a change maker. And I say that because in the end, what matters to her, and I ask her this, and if you're having trouble deciding who to vote for as you leave, I want you to ask yourself this. Everybody's all caught up in this election. Who's saying what in the debates? Who's saying what in this? The ads are. There's a hilarious ad on now. You seen the ad of her opponent saying, "I don't take money from oil companies"? Y'all seen that ad? Guess what? It's true. The only problem is neither does any other person running for office, neither has any other candidate for public office alive today. It's been illegal to take money from oil companies for 100 years in America. So I got tickled out of that. Next thing I know, we'll have an ad say, you got to vote for me for president. I don't steal cars. Or, you know, whatever. We got to laugh about this a little bit. You know, everybody's a little too uptight. But let me tell you something. In the end, you have to decide what matters. So how would you decide to answer this question? So this is the last thing I want to say to you. When you walk out this door, I want you to walk out answering this question. How will you decide if the next president did a good job after the term is over? Because that's what matters. Not how we feel today, not the arguments we're having today. It all vanishes. I can tell you, I've been out of the White House almost as long as I was in. It's over like that. How will you decide? I asked Hillary that question at the beginning of this campaign because I told her, I said, everybody says you're going to win the primary, you can't be elected in the general. They're wrong. You'll have a hard time winning the primary, but if you do, you'll be elected handily. I still believe that. I still believe that. But here's the important thing. Forget about the politics. You ask yourself this question. What do you want out of the next president? How will you know if the next president did a good job? So I asked her that. She thought a while, and here's how she answered it. She said, I believe I will have been faithful to the American people if I can say three things. Number one, the people are better off when I quit than when I started. Number two, the young people, our children and grandchildren, have a much brighter future now than they did before. And number three, our country and this fascinating but troubled world are coming together instead of being torn apart. Now you think about that. Think about it. If you want the answers to those questions to be yes, then I hope you will say yes to Hillary, because I believe with all my heart, you'll have more prosperity than you did when I was president. I believe you'll be proud of the work she does around the world. And I know you'll be able to say the American people are better off, our kids have a brighter future, and the world is coming together. And in the end, when it's all said and done, it's all said and done for me. I know that's what counts. Please, please say yes to her, Indiana, and you can make her the nominee. Thank you, and God bless you.